Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Film Club Podcast, where every month we deep dive into a different aspect of cinema. Directors, actors, genres, or franchises, it does not matter, because it's always fun at the Film Club. I'm Dean.
I'm Boo.
And this month we're talking about movies about movies. And this week we're talking about
The Artist.
From 2011. This is a 5-time Oscar winner. It is considered one of the most awarded films in French cinema.
It was nominated for 10 Academy Awards.
And it is a silent film made about 90 years after silent films went out of favor.
Yeah.
And it's fucking fascinating. Absolutely fascinating.
Yeah, this is a movie that's near and dear to my heart. I've talked about it in the past. I think I went to go see this in the movie theaters like 5-6 times.
Okay. Usually your movies are one and dones, but this one you just kept going back.
I mean, there's some that I see twice in the theaters, like Guardians 2, sorry. The Batman. But yeah, this is the only one that I've seen, like a whole hand, a couple digits. Like, damn, that's a lot of times, to go back to the theater just to see one singular movie.
That is like a thing with this movie when it came out, because when it comes out, like every critic is like, oh, the savior of the cinema. Like, what is it? Roger Ebert's like, oh, this movie, it's like the best movie to come out in like 30 years about movies, There were people who were talking about like, yeah, I went to go see this like 3 times, just the first one was for my job as a reviewer. The other 2 times were just for me.
Yeah.
And it's wild to me that this movie is so beloved.
Oh, God.
Okay.
Is this where you're going to drop the boom on me?
The boom is that I love the movie. Like, the boom is that
wow.
I really did enjoy the movie. I thought it was like...
So the knot in my stomach can unclench now.
Exactly.
Okay.
For anyone who's wondering, every time we come in to record a movie that, Becky picks... She's always like, if Dean hates this movie, I don't think I can handle it.
I don't think my heart is strong enough.
I am not that critical about movies.
You
like,
are.
Honestly. I'm a little critical
you so are.
I'm a little mean about movies, but
I mean, you cut it, then you pour the lemon juice in my wounds, and you add some rock salt in there just to really make sure I feel it.
I only mildly disliked Addams Family Values, and then you kept challenging me on it, and it made me hate it more.
Hey. You were mad that people love Addams Family Values and that it did better than Meatballs.
I don't understand
that.
And
it did better than Camp Nowhere.
I don't understand that.
The
not
numbers
at all.
were so good for Addams Family Values.
I do not understand that. That for the longest time, Addams Family Values was our most viewed episode on YouTube.
It was awesome.
If it wasn't for the fact that The Mummy just blew up on the algorithm, that movie might still be our #1 episode of our first year. Might be.
And then Dean claims not to be, a movie snob or, I don't get that critical, but this man sits up at night and thinks about Addams Family Values.
It makes me so fucking angry.
I think the Frida's going to play it soon, or they just recently played it. I was going to get us tickets so we could go see it on the big screen.
That movie just makes me so fucking angry because I'm like...
Because it did better than your picks.
It's not even that. I watched the movie, I'm like, this makes no fucking sense, and it looks awful. It looks so bad.
I love it so much. Well, come on, Pubert, give us the synopsis.
It's so fucking savage. But yeah, so the Artist, right? I really did enjoy the movie. I thought it was just really lovely. It's a nice little melodrama. I like silent films.
Yeah.
Are you a silent film girl? Like, do you go back and watch silent movies?
I mean, I am the one that got you into Chaplin.
Yes, that's true.
And then you have been, withholding my Chaplin DVDs from me.
You loaned me The Great Dictator. You knew this was going to happen.
Well, I mean, it would be one thing if you were just holding on to one. You're holding on to all my DVDs. You're like, yeah, you're not getting them back. And I'm like, what?
Yeah, it's nice. I don't have to buy them.
No, they're mine.
Yeah, But yeah, like, I know you're a Chaplin girl. I like Buster Keaton.
Yeah, I enjoy Buster Keaton too.
But do you go back and watch like silent dramas, like your Sunrises or like Metropolis, Dr. Mabuse, things like that?
It depends. I mean, I have to be like in the mood for it. This is just the one that kind of, when you say a movie has boo energy.
This has boo energy.
This is like, the nucleus of boo energy.
Old style film. It's black and white. It's in love with old Hollywood. There's tap dancing in it and a musical number. Yeah, this is a lot of boo energy. Yeah. Again, like it is. I really did love the movie. I thought it was a lot of fun. But I will say I am more fascinated by it than I am enthralled by what the movie's actually doing.
Mm-hmm.
Because again, it's 2011 when this movie comes out, and they are taking
2012 for the States.
Or
Because it debuted at Cannes, and then, it made its way around the circuit before we eventually finally got it here.
did it already win an Oscar before it debuted in America?
No. It had won, I think, Jean Dujardin, he had won Best Actor from Cannes.
Oh, he already got Cannes, BAFTAs, the César Awards.
So it was a thing where, it was kind of like, wow, he's really getting all these major awards, and it hasn't even debuted in the States yet. So I think by the time we got it here, it wasn't too far away from the Oscars.
Oh, it was one of those things where it gets in at like November, December release, and then, Oscars in March it wins. I see. Yeah, because the movie being this huge, huge artistic swing of being a black and white silent film, and it doing as well as it does is incredibly fascinating to me, because the year it comes out, we're getting like Cars 2, Deathly Hallows Part 2,
Midnight in Paris.
Hugo. Yeah, we're getting all these movies. Like, I think Pirates of the Caribbean on Stranger Tides comes out this year. These movies that
Puss
are doing...
in Boots.
Yeah, these movies that are making so much money. It is the year of sequel blockbusters. And, the Oscar contentions, we'll get into that, because I think the Oscar contention this year was, like, pretty weak. But the movie itself is so different than everything else in the field. This movie is a different breed of what's going on.
Oh, yeah. I know a lot about this movie. I've seen it a ton of times. I love, learning about movies. So there was a lot of things I already knew going into the movies, or into this movie. But, yes, it won a ton of Oscars. But just, the accolades that, it made with those Oscars, like, this being the most decorated French film. This was
I think that's a weird one, right? Because you think of French movies and you're like, oh well, Breathless, Rules of the Game. There's got to be like 400 Blows. There's got to be all these like French New Wave films that probably have all these accolades. And this movie just sweeps every fucking award show it ever shows up in.
And then you dive in deep to the Academy Award history, where this is the only second silent film picture to win for Best Picture.
Yeah.
Following Wings in 1927.
Have you seen Wings?
Haven't seen it.
It is Top Gun, but for World War I.
Oh, awesome.
No meme. Okay, because I've seen, because two films win Best Picture that year. It's Sunrise and Wings.
Yeah.
Sunrise is a goddamn masterpiece. Like, Sunrise is like legitimately one of the greatest movies ever made.
And that was also part of the art direction for this movie. It was based off of Sunrise by Murnau.
F.W. Murnau. He's the same guy that did what was it? Nosferatu.
Yes.
Which, another like fucking kino film.
And City Girl from 1930. So these two movies were kind of the inspo for this film. But, back to the Academy Awards. So, this is the second silent film to ever take, home a Best Picture award. This was the first ever Academy Best Picture award winner to be produced from a non-English-speaking country. And it was financed, in France and Belgium. So it's not even a film that was financed here, even though the film is entirely shot in Los Angeles and Hollywood.
That's a thing people get confused about, being like, oh, well, it's a movie, it's set in America and all this other stuff. It's a French film. Like,
it is. It's not an American film. This is a French film by French actors and directors and
producers. Pretty much everyone except the where it is filmed is French.
Yeah, and I mean, Jean Dujardin, he's the first French actor to ever win Best Actor.
And he gives a great performance in this movie.
Oh, yeah.
But let's tell everyone what the movie's actually about.
We got the back of the box today.
We do have the back of the box today for the artist.
Oh, you can't read that box, can you?
I'm working it out. Okay, I got it. Okay. Sorry, my eyes aren't what they used to be. So, the back of the box for the artist. George Valentin is a movie star that is George Valentin is a movie star that is having a crisis when sound is introduced into film and his career begins to fade. Parallel to George is Peppy Miller, a one-time extra and dancer who gets her big break, and as sound enters film, her star begins to rise. These two stories intertwine over the 5 years as sound changes film and brings these two closer together. as they fall in love. Also, like, George goes through like the worst beats ever.
Oh yeah, I mean George is, this movie, to describe it to someone that hasn't seen it, it's like Singing in the Rain without the music.
Without the joy, it gets really depressing and dark in the middle.
It does, but just to see, the contrasts, and he's at the top of his game when we start the movie, and Peppy is, working her way up through the ranks. And then it's just a complete 180 where Peppy becomes the star and he's kind of this has-been.
Yeah.
But, Peppy's still grateful that because of him, she was able to get a foothold into the industry. And because of her feelings for him, she's never really let him go. She's tried to, keep his head above the water, but he's not helping himself either.
Yeah. Let's get into their performances, because the movie is silent, so it's not very plotty. It's a melodrama.
Yeah,
really.
You have to read into what's happening. I mean, you get, cue cards every now and then, but it's mostly reading into the performances.
Yeah, and the lead performance of Jean
Dujardin.
Okay, Jean, our buddy Jean here, great performance. Honestly, he is doing a lot, and it's a silent performance, so he has to be able to pantomime and play not only silent film acting, which is kind of over the top. I love the sequence when he's at the dance, when he first dances with Peppy. But yeah, with Pepper Potts.
We're going back into Marvel.
Exactly. When he's dancing with Peppy, and they're like, all right, are you ready? And action. And he, looks like, a Zorro, where he's like moving across and he's like hamming it up, right? Because that's old school silent film acting. And then when he gets to Peppy and they kind of lock eyes and they're doing a little dance and it changes, and then he goes from...
He's becoming more human.
Yes. He goes from this very over-the-top, showy acting to this naturalistic, post-1950s, 60s, naturalism. But it's still toned in a way that you can understand it in a silent film. And that seems like a huge... amazing leap to me, where he's able to play subtle but readable without dialogue, because that people think, well, whatever, you're just watching this guy look his eyes around, you'd understand that he is madly in love and also incredibly depressed. I'm like, that's fucking difficult to do when you can't talk to anybody.
Yeah,
right. And it's a fascinating performance in that. Peppy Miller, on the other hand, I don't think she's as good as Desjardins. Jean.
I love Peppy Miller, who is played by Berenice Bejo. She is the wife of the director of this movie.
I could tell.
And he since that's his wife, he was able to write her into the character, and I feel like I think she's amazing. I
think she's good. I don't know if she's amazing. I think my issue with her performance is, I know this is going to sound weird, she feels so much more modern. Which, and hear me out on this. I can see how it plays into it a little bit, where, she's adapting to sound. She is this person who's a little out of time, whereas Jean, he is perfect. He looks like he could just be Douglas Fairbanks.
Yeah,
he looks like a silent film star.
That's also, who his character is based off of. He's a mixture of Douglas Fairbanks Sr. And John Gilbert.
Yeah, but he looks like he could walk into any 1920s film set and fit right in.
Oh yeah.
Her, for some reason, I could not get the feeling that she looked right for
I think
a
that's just
1920 thing. Well, how she's acting also feels like a different level of acting for this era, when she's being the star girl. I don't know. I felt weird with her in this position. It might be a thing where my taste, your taste differ in this point.
Yeah, I think that's just a you thing, because I feel like she's very appropriate to the period, but at the same time, we don't really know the age gap in between George and Peppy. I mean, obviously, he's older than she is, but we don't know by how much.
I would say they're both in their 30s. He's on one end, she's on the other.
So, I have a feeling that it's more, he is stuck in his ways of, a lot of the actors in the silent, film genre, where it was just sound, sound's not going to be a thing. And, Peppy's, one of these young bloods in it, where it's kind of like, oh no, cool, we're getting new technology, new opportunities, let's go. So it feels like she's always got, that grasp on the future, and George is just kind of sticking to the past because there's nothing guaranteed in the future.
Do you think, okay, because I understand you disagree with my my premise of
Peppy.
Yeah. or of the Beatrice, is that her name?
Yeah, it's
Beatrice
no.
Lestrange.
No.
She's not that French.
Berenice Bejo. I think she's like Spanish.
Argentinian?
Something, yeah.
Beatrice Bejo, like her performance, I read it as being very modern and different. I'm wondering, based on the reading you had of like, she's feeling more modern. Do you think that's on purpose?
Yeah,
do you think she is like being more modern because her character is supposed to be this next wave?
Yeah, and that's a perfect way to describe it. I feel like we have...
I try to describe as well as I can.
Yes, like the old Hollywood and the new Hollywood, where we have someone that has grown through the vaudevillian days, which would be George, and her where she's kind of like, suitcase and a dream, and kind of, no, I want to stick in this, genre where, I don't really have to, sing or talk or do anything. I can just, be the hero, the swashbuckler, the aviator. I've got this. And her where it's, no, I want more deeper, more critical roles. And it's just, these two very different spectrums of Hollywood, old Hollywood, new Hollywood.
Which is funny because this is more like old Hollywood and ancient Hollywood.
Yes.
Because I think it's an interesting thing because like they're talking about like the transition of the silent era into sound. Mm-hmm. And, we talked about Singing in the Rain. In Singing in the Rain, that transition, according to the movie, was like 6 months.
Yeah.
Right? In reality, it was like a couple years.
Yeah.
Because Jazz Singer's 27, but it took a while for every studio to adapt over to sound films.
Was Jazz Singer 27 or 29?
27.
27, okay.
Yeah, because, what is it? City Lights, or not City Lights, Modern Times by Chaplin. That was, what, 33?
Yeah, that was after sound. So
But Chaplin was famously the last holdout for silent cinema.
And that's what we kind of get in this movie, where George is like, it's like no one's telling him that he's a bad actor. It's him being stubborn and I don't want to move on with the times.
I love the twist at the end when we actually figure out why he can't transition. Mm-hmm. I love that. We're going to get into that, but it is interesting because through the movie, we get George being very stuck to his ways. Mm-hmm. And, that's kind of true to life. There were a lot of silent film stars that were like, guys, sounds just a fad. It's just gonna pass, just like, horse and just like these whole, cars, motor vehicles. We're gonna go past the horse and buggies next summer.
Yeah.
Which is interesting, but it's also interesting as to his reaction to it. He comes off as very dismissive of sound. Mm-hmm. He almost looks at sound not as like, oh, it's a fad. It's like, this is like
a joke.
Yeah, like why would you put this in a movie? This makes no sense. Mm-hmm. And that's something that's unique to this character. Because Singing in the Rain, I think they are playing it off as like, oh, sound, it's this new big thing, and it's going to be a whole humdinger, catch this one. But in this, it's almost like, no, it's a joke. Like, why would we ever do this? And then you kind of see him being pretty much punished for the next hour of the movie for not adapting to the times.
Yeah, punished in a sense, but he's also kind of punishing himself because there's opportunities, people are trying to help him, and he's just like, I got this, I'm going to do it on my own. I'm going to hemorrhage cash to make my own silent movie to show that, silent movies are still the way to go. Yikes. And it just, it bombs at the box office.
Yeah, and that's a thing that's interesting in the movie.
And, I love that they also put in, real world things like, the stock market crashing in 29.
Yes.
And he loses money in that. And you see, he has to auction off things from his home. He has to sell his home.
It is very interesting how the movie is playing with its timeline, mm-hmm. because the movie starts in 27, right? Yeah. And we end the movie in 33?
I believe so.
So, because we get like a 5-year span or something like that. It's like 33 or 32, maybe. I can't do math. But it's,
you can.
Not well. But it's one of those things where the movie is kind of showing the decline of George and the rise of Peppy. Mm-hmm. And Peppy is kind of like, I'm trying to think of a good surrogate for her. Like, do you know what her character is kind of based off of? Is it like a Marlene Dietrich or
I don't remember if they said, who she's supposed to kind of, be embodying. I think she's just kind of her own creation. She's not like, with George, you're able to tell, he's Fairbanks and Gilbert and, a lot
little
of
bit
these,
of Gable, a little bit of that.
a little bit of Chaplin, because he's really able to pull your heartstrings in this movie. You just feel so, bad for him. But I think Peppy is just maybe a good mixture of a lot of these women from this time.
She has a Clara Bow look to her.
Clara Bow, she's got the smarts and the wit and like the American sweetheart of Mary Pickford.
She has like the little beauty mark going on, which, God, there's an actress from like the silent era that I'm forgetting her name, but I think they stole a lot of her look over, and I do apologize. I can't remember what the fuck her name is. These people have been dead for like 100 years.
Yeah, that's the only bad thing. It's like, I love silent movies, but I don't know a lot about these actors apart from like the big silent film actors like Chaplin, Buster Keaton,
Pickford,
Fairbanks.
It is a very interesting thing because like so much of this movie is a love letter to those people, that silent cinema. I mean, they directly parallel it when they show Zorro in the movie. Douglas Fairbanks is Zorro.
It's actual footage, and they just CG'd Jean Dujardin in like the close-up scenes, but I mean that's actual footage from a Fairbanks movie.
I don't even think they CG'd. I think they literally just cut away Fairbanks's close-ups and then just inserted different close-ups.
That's what I mean. Sorry. Yeah. They did cutaways of it, but it's just, it's not, they had him just redo those scenes. It's like, no, we'll actually show authentic silent film footage in this movie.
And it's just interesting how much of this movie is that kind of love letter, down to like not just in the characters' like looks, because George Valentin is very much the Fairbanks. We said it a million times.
He's got the pencil mustache.
But the other thing is how the movie is made.
Yeah.
Because that's the level that I think people don't understand. It's black and white and it's silent, and there's sound in two scenes used strictly for like story purpose.
Yeah. The film was
meant to make a point.
Yeah, and it was filmed on Super 35 and Panavision.
Yes.
And it, to my surprise, I just learned this today when I was doing my notes, it was shot in color and then turned into black and white. But I think it benefits because it gives the movie this really warm feeling. Well,
here's the reason they did it. And this is what I was going to my point with, the production side of it. They filmed it in color because the black and white film stock of now is too sharp. You go back to silent movies, the black and white's a little soft. There's a lot of gray. The whites are pretty like fluffy and things like that. And they found that if you shoot something with 35 millimeters color stock and then in post desaturate it, it's closer to true silent film stock. And the other thing is they shot the movie instead of the standard 24 frames a second. That's what basically every movie you ever see is in 24 frames a second.
Yeah.
They shot it in 22 because silent film is kind of wonky in that way. Like
it's faster.
Yeah, it's a little bit faster. Passion of Joan of Arc by Carl Dreyer. That movie has issues with this because you can watch it in the intended 16 frames a second or the more appropriate 24 frames a second. And there's a whole argument from all these silent film people of being like, the frames matter, goddammit.
Yeah.
Just like in speed runs, the frames matter. But that is a thing that I find so interesting, and the fact that there's no zooms done to anything because they're like, well, the silent movies didn't have zooms.
Yeah, I'm not going to try to even pronounce the director's last name. I watched the making of. They said it really quick, and I just can't pick it up.
This is the one problem with our podcast is none of us can pronounce people's names.
I mean, looking at it, his name's Michel Hazanavicius.
Hazanavicius.
Well, we'll just say Michelle.
Yeah, Mike. Mickey.
But, it's a thing where, he understands, he's a movie lover too. And it's just, he wasn't doing any craning shots because these shots weren't around, when these movies were being made. So it's like, he's like, respecting the old style, the original style of how films were made.
it's also fascinating because the reason he makes the movies because he's just madly in love with silent film.
And this is his, love letter to cinema, to Hollywood, old Hollywood.
And the interesting thing, right, about that whole conceit is, I think pretty famously, I think it was F.W. Murnau said this after Sunrise was released. And I'm pretty sure it was Murnau. It might have been somebody else. But they lamented the introduction of sound because they thought sound set back cinema decades. Now, here's why. The silent film, genre, like the silent film era.
Yeah.
By the beginning of the silent film era, like basically the dawn of cinema, was all experimental.
Yeah.
We're trying to figure out what the hell is a movie.
Mm-hmm.
How can you communicate with film? How can you get things to work? And if you watch really early film stuff like Trip to the Moon, Great Train Robbery,
the first Frankenstein movie,
the Thomas Edison one, it's all locked down. We're basically filming a stage. The camera does not move. Mm-hmm. We're just trying to figure out how to tell a story.
Yeah.
Then you get something like Intolerance, D.W. Griffith, where it's
Mm-hmm.
like, okay, big production, grand stuff. We're getting close-ups. We're picking up more and more stuff. And that's like 1915, right?
We get The Kid.
Yeah, The Kid, Chaplin, learns how to really is evolving storytelling
Mm-hmm.
as they're going. In 27, Murnau's like, we have just scratched the surface on how to truly tell a story with our camera, because we've now learned that we can move the camera in ways that we never learned before. But then when sound came along, they're like, you're a slave to the microphone. You
Mm-hmm.
have to leave the microphone in a specific spot so the actors can do it. And because of that, you can't move the camera. And also, your cameras are loud. You have to do them up. So then cameras went from being able to move around and do whatever they want and really experiment with the frame and the composition.
Being, stationary.
Yeah, and that's interesting because if you watch movies from the early 30s, for most of the 30s, it goes back to being very locked down. We don't
Mm-hmm.
move around a lot. And we only start getting real camera movements once cameras just get fucking lighter in the 60s.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking, what would have happened if we never got sound? And I think this movie is kind of asking that question, being like, hey, we have all of modern technology and all the learned cinematic languages, and we can still make great movies without sound.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of the objective the director was going for. At least that's what my reading was.
Oh, yeah. I mean, look at the silent film. It just completely sweeped at every, award ceremony banquet that it, was nominated into. And it's like, yeah, silent pictures are still able to move us. But it also makes a good point of we can't stay in the past. We have to progress. And, eventually we'll talk about the end of the movie where, we do get some progression.
It's lovely. I love the ending.
I was hoping. I wasn't sure,
Everyone, the ending to this movie slaps. It is so good.
Is it Kino?
Kino.
Good.
Kino ending. But, we've mentioned that a bunch of times because you watch the Oscars like I watch the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
And, you keep saying the movie swept, the movie swept, the movie swept. Technically it didn't sweep, but it won like 3 out of the 5 biggest awards of the year.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, Berenice Bejo didn't win Best Supporting Actress.
I don't even think she was nominated.
She was nominated.
Best Supporting. Oh yeah, she was nominated for Best Supporting. I'm surprised she didn't get lead. That sounds like category fraud to me.
I know. I didn't understand it either. I wasn't happy because I think she put in an amazing performance.
I wonder if that was a role to try and make sure she could get one, because if she was in Best Actress, she would be fighting against Meryl Streep.
Yeah.
That was probably a strategic move.
It could have been, but something that kind of caught me off guard, and I didn't learn that till today, was obviously the movie wins for Best Score.
Yes.
The score is phenomenal. It takes you on a journey with, the emotions of the movie, the highs and the lows.
Yeah, it plays really well in, like any good silent film does, well into what's going on screen, and it's also taking cues, this movie specifically, from other scores of the era and from other pieces of music throughout cinema to try and make you feel like you are watching this. Not even a love letter to silent films, a love letter to emotional storytelling without dialogue.
Cinema.
Like cinema, but music is the original, just eternal communicator. Like people feel things when they listen to music that is like unexplainable. Like music just works in a way to your brain that just doesn't. It's really interesting. This movie is very beautiful. But yeah, the score.
But so the person that composed the score for this movie was Ludovic Borsch. I have the CD somewhere, but
good old Luda.
Yeah, but what was interesting was that he didn't have any training in leading an orchestra. It was a thing where he had learned how to read music as a kid, and learned how to pick up different instruments and did that. But this was like his first time actually conducting an orchestra and creating basically like a symphony, because this movie is
it's very big.
Yeah.
The music sounds very big and composed. I mean, there was controversy because I guess he kind of stole some Bernard Herrmann score from Vertigo.
I don't think there was controversy because the director Michel, he used
the Vertigo love theme, right?
He does, but in one of his other movies with Dujardin, he uses music from North by Northwest. So it's a thing where he's done it in the past. And I mean, I remember the first time I watched this in the theater and I'm listening and I'm like, I know this piece of music. And, it took me a couple of tries, watching the movie again and again. I'm like, oh, Vertigo. But I mean, it was just this strong feeling to the music that I had in Vertigo that I did with this movie. And it works in both scenes that we get, the scene with Jimmy Stewart and Kim Novak when she comes back, from the dead. And then we have George, who is just, at the end of his rope. And he's just like, I'm ready to let go of it all.
Yeah, well, I mean, don't get me wrong. It's beautiful. But there was controversy because I guess like Bernard Herrmann's wife was like, hey, I didn't get a check for that. And you used
I don't remember, or I haven't seen any of that.
Well, I saw when I was doing my research, but that was a whole thing about it. But I mean, the score is very good, and it is using like homage like throughout. And
I mean, even Pennies from Heaven, makes a cameo.
I am so surprised that's in the movie because it's the only. That's the first time we hear a person's voice.
Yeah.
In the entire movie, and it's like 40 minutes in, and I'm like, what? Wait a. Well, it's been so weird. I haven't heard a human voice in like 40 minutes.
Dude, try watching this in the theater. I mean, it was such a trip just to be in there and, you're not hearing anything apart from the score because you're just so used to, hearing the dialogue along with what you're seeing on the screen. But I mean, I swear, when he drops the glass, I jumped out of my seat because I had gotten so used to, not hearing anything and just watching that the sound, it scared me. I was like, what the hell is that? And I was like, oh, he's putting down his glass. Like, wait, there's sound now? It just kind of threw me.
Yeah, there's an interesting thing about the movie is that there are very surreal, dreamlike moments into it that work so well. And that in the nightmare scene where he starts hearing sound and he's going crazy and he can't hear his own voice, though.
He's screaming at himself in the mirror and nothing's coming out.
Absolutely genius.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely genius use of storytelling. But we're talking about the Oscars, and I wanted to bring this up because, it won Best Picture, and I feel this was a little bit of a weak year. Now, I'll read off the other categories, or the other people involved, and I just want to know your opinion. Do you think this...
I had already looked up. I already know what was out that year. A lot of those movies I enjoyed, so it made it difficult because I liked those movies, but I liked the artists more than I liked those movies.
Okay, well, let me read it off for our audience.
Okay.
So we have War Horse, Steven Spielberg's War Horse, right? His foray into more dad movies. We have The Tree of Life, Terrence Malick, which is an amazing movie, but it's a very like artsy movie. There's like dinosaurs in that movie, and it's about this family in like Texas. Really weird artsy movie. Moneyball, Brad Pitt, like it's a baseball movie.
Yep.
It's probably the baseball movie now. Midnight in Paris,
one of my favorites.
Boo loves Woody Allen, just adores
him.
Oh no. Just all the movies he's done nothing wrong.
No.
Great filmmaker.
Factually incorrect. Dude's a douche. A gross douche. But I do love Midnight in Paris.
Then we have Hugo, because Scorsese's like, I need to make a kids movie, goddammit.
And that was a big movie that year.
It was nominated more than The Artist. It was nominated for 11 and it won 5.
Yeah.
We also have The Help.
Yeah. Another good movie.
Another good movie. Octavia Spencer, she wins Best Supporting Actor for this. I believe Viola Davis. Viola Davis was nominated for the movie as well.
Yeah, I couldn't remember if Viola took it too or someone else took the award.
Meryl Streep did for The Iron Lady. Well,
yeah.
Again,
Yeah.
You never run against Streep. Just go home.
I just couldn't remember if she was there that year. Yeah, apparently she was.
Yeah. And then we have Extremely Loud and Incredibly Close, a movie that I think everyone at this point thinks is like not a good movie.
Haven't seen it.
That's what the other half of people think about that movie. I looked this up because I guess it has like a 40% on Rotten Tomatoes, like
Really?
a critic score. And I'm like, this is nominated for Best Picture? Like, whatever. Then we also have The Descendants, which is like comedy drama, George Clooney, and then The Artist, right? Artist wins, but all the rest of those movies, I looked at them and I'm like, yeah, I don't know any of these movies, honestly. Like, I think The Artist out of all of these is like the biggest swing in the most like Oscar bait movie they could have possibly designed.
There was a lot of, big movies that were in there that year, but I think that this was the right pick.
Do you I understand it's the right pick. I agree it's the right pick out of that list. But do you think that list of movies, it might have had an easier run? Because there's at least, because we talked about this with Gods and Monsters, right? With Ian McKellen, and he's like great Oscar-worthy performance, and then you list off like 5 all-time great cinema performances, and you're like, that was a rough year, man. I'm so sorry.
No, but I think, it had some contenders. It was going against Scorsese.
Scorsese.
It was going against Scorsese, Spielberg,
Woody Allen.
Say
what you will
You've
about him.
got Brad Pitt in there. You've got George Clooney in there. So it's like, there's a lot of, big people. And then you have this French film with, a couple of American actors in the movie.
All supporting roles.
Supporting roles, yeah.
I'm going to point this out. They say Malcolm McDowell's in this movie. He is in one scene. I
It
did not get enough McDowell in this movie.
Were you surprised when you saw him?
I am so surprised I saw him. I was like, Malcolm McDowell's in this movie? I fucking love Malcolm McDowell.
I know you do. That's why there was no way I was going to tell you he makes a cameo in this movie.
I was so mad he's only in one fucking scene on it. And it's not, he doesn't even do anything. He looks at a paper. He's like, yes. And then hands it back to her. And then that's his whole fucking scene. We have Alex DeLarge and you waste him.
But, it's Peppy showing him, ooh, I'm this kind of like, who is this girl? The new it girl. And then, just with Malcolm McDowell, his expressions and just with the sweep of his hand, well, who is she? And it's just
She's like, I'm famous. And he's like, bitch, no, you're not. Slaps magazine.
That's why it's like, it's very, it's a quick scene, but at the same time, it's funny. Well, who is she? I don't know.
Yeah. And it's very interesting. It's very interesting because the movie, again, it did have contenders. I just thought it was so wild that this won Best Picture because of how weird it is. Look, okay.
It's not that weird.
Okay, I'm going to release a silent film from France in 2011, and it's going to make 100 times its box office and then sweep every award ceremony. Like, that is insane.
Yeah.
Come on. You got to agree that if you were a producer, right, and you were in charge of money, and you were like, we need to make money, and you greenlit this seems like such a huge, this seems like such a huge risk. Again,
I just, earlier in the episode said that this was major boo energy. Absolutely, if I was a producer, I'd greenlight this.
That's true. I might be talking to a difficult audience on this one, but we'll talk about this, right? The movie, $15 million budget, makes $134 million at the box office. Again, fucking, who's going to go see this silent film?
Hello.
Never mind. Yeah, you want to go see it 5 times in the theater. Why? Again, so wild to me. It is so wild to me of how well this movie did.
Yeah, I mean, I saw the trailer for this movie on the news because it was this big thing that happened at Cannes.
Yeah.
And it was... they're like, oh yeah, this is the star, of the film festival. And they proceed to play the trailer. And I'm like, oh my God, this is amazing. This is everything that I've ever looked for in a movie. So I had to wait from when it debuted at Cannes to when we finally got it here in the United States. And it was worth the wait. So I can't be the only one that saw, the trailer and thought, oh no, this actually looks like it's going to be an amazing movie. I have to go see this.
It feels like such a movie out of time.
It feels like a warm hug.
Oddly enough, a lot of people described it as being like just this like nice like melodrama blanket that's just it makes you love going to the movies.
It does.
And
you're just,
it's so weird.
You're in turmoil over there trying to figure it out.
Well, you know me. I like thinking about movies and figuring out why they work, and it's like
and driving yourself crazy.
Oh, I love doing that. Oh, I stay awake at night driving myself crazy. But the movie, I get why it works. It's a melodrama. It has some beautiful, lovely, scenes in it. There's a really interesting arc going on. I think the swing it's taking just by existing is worth the run, honestly. I mean, the fact that it's a silent film, again, in the year of our Lord, 2011, and it works is insane to me. And the fact that it's not played as a joke, like it's not a parody.
Yeah, it's not like Mel Brooks's silent movie
where he's like, "You're gonna release a silent film? Yes. Why?" And that's the whole fucking joke.
Yeah, this is like, no, we're releasing a silent movie. There's no, no strings attached. This is our movie. We're taking it very seriously, and these are the lives of our characters living in this world.
And it's also such a blank check kind of gig, because I guess the director filmed basically the French version of Austin Powers, and they were like, this did well enough, you can make whatever you want.
It was something
OSS 117.
Yeah, I watched it after I watched The Artist.
Oh, really?
Because I love Jean Dujardin. I mean, I had never seen him before, but I loved his portrayal of George Valentin, and I'm like, he's a good actor. So I don't know how I found or I rented a copy of it. And he's hilarious in it. I absolutely love it.
Well, again, apparently it's a thing where he is really famous in France as like a comedian.
Yeah, he's also France's George Clooney.
Oh, okay. I guess France can all have their Will Ferrell look like George Clooney. Yeah, French is just going to be like that. Some bullshit.
I mean, Jean Dujardin is a very handsome man, and he could dance.
Oh, God. Do you want to talk about the ending?
I know you do, because
It's so good. So the ending is... So, after George has hit his rock bottom and Penny's like, lift him up...
We'll come back and describe everything that happens in the rock bottom.
You know what? Let's do that first,
okay,
so everything makes sense. So, George, he rejects sound. Penny accepts sounds. And Peppy. Sorry. Penny Lane.
Do you want me to relay it?
Yes, you relay. You've seen this movie, again, 6 times in theaters, 12 times at home.
Probably more than that.
This year.
I mean, I still have the LA Times newspaper after it won all the Oscars.
I'm impressed you still own newspaper.
I've got a couple of newspapers from, big events that have happened, but...
You're like, I got my copy when Kennedy died. I got that on my wall.
No, those go for a lot of money.
All right, so... The Artist, what happens?
So after George rejects sound, he makes his own movie, Tears of Love, which bombs at the box office. From there, it's just him kind of sizing down because, he's got that big, loss. He's already lost money from the stock market crash. And while he's declining, Peppy's rising. And it's just this thing where we see him, moving into a small apartment and not really doing much. I thought it was heartbreaking when he finally lets go of Clifton.
Oh, his butler, played by James Cromwell?
James Cromwell, his driver, not his butler.
Okay, but might as well be his butler.
His driver / best friend.
Manservant. Male confidant.
No.
Companion. Best friend.
Best friend.
Homie.
One of his best friends, because Uggy is also his main man.
His doggo?
His doggo. I love him so much.
His little Jack Russell Terrier.
Oh my God, I love him so much.
But yes.
But, we start to see the real fall of George, and he just,
takes to the bottle.
He's going through footage, and he's just kind of like, I can never be at that level that I was, and starts a fire, and then it's like, oh my God, why did I start a fire? He is saved by his dog, who is able to get help. Peppy, takes him home to help, have him recuperate instead of sitting in a hospital. Then, George discovers, because there was a silent auction to sell off all his stuff, Peppy, being the good friend that she is, she bought all of his things, but had two of her staff outbid each other to really put more money into George's pocket. Because you assume at that time, he's got debts rolling.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just, she's trying to help whatever way she can. And he's just, she even comes up with the concept for, the two of them to be in a movie. He rejects it because he just can't let go of that pride. And Clifton's like, you need to stop being so proud and just accept the help.
He wants to be the artist, the lone auteur.
Yeah, and that's a point that he makes in his, newspaper synopsis for his new movie is, I'm not like these people that are jumping on a new fad. I am a true artist, and I will stick with silent films. And it's just, you're just being stubborn, which ultimately leads to his attempted suicide attempt. And I think this is the Oscar-winning moment for Dujardin, because, he's phenomenal in the rest of the movie, but I think this is where we truly see that George has broken.
Yes.
And it's just, especially when he's sitting at the scene and he's crying and he's covering his mouth while he's crying, and you have all, the inserts of the mouths like talking and laughing, and it's just,
his anxiety about the human voice.
The human voice, and him feeling like he has no voice. And he's there, and that part makes me misty-eye every time I watch it, because you have Uggy, who's basically begging him not to do it. He's barking and he's clawing at him, and he's just looking at him like, I can't, do this another day. And what did you think when we get the bang on the screen?
Okay, I love that, because Peppy realizes what's going on. George has ran off, and she's driving to his house as George is like getting the revolver down. He's going to, kill himself. And it just cuts to an insert of the word bang, and it holds. And I noticed it held longer than any other intertitle. And I was like, no, this movie doesn't have the kind of balls to do that to me, right? Because honestly, I was like, this is a French movie. George might have just killed himself. They might have just done that to me. But then when it cuts back and it's like, oh no, Peppy just crashed her car.
Just crashed into the tree.
Oh, okay. And I'm like, women drivers, am I right?
Wow.
Oh, am I right?
We save your ass, and over here, no, you guys can't drive.
Objectively, Peppy can't drive, all right? She did crash her car into a tree.
Hey, she was waiting for Clifton. Clifton was on a break, and she's like, you know what? Time is of the essence. I have to drive this big-ass car to go save George. And that car is huge.
It is. Old school town cars. But it is great. Like, I thought that was wonderful. I'm surprised it didn't win Best Editing. I looked. Girl with the Dragon Tattoo won Best Editing.
Oh, okay.
But I'm like, this seems like, granted, it's classic, like, build tension, whatever. But I'm like, I love the callback. I love, like...
Did your heart drop?
It didn't drop. Like, again, I wasn't like... oh, he killed himself. I was like, no way they fucking did.
Well, yeah,
no.
That would count like, like a, like, oh my God, what happened?
Well, I wasn't like shocked. I was like, oh, do it. You fucking won't. I was kind of...
please, you were sitting there in the dark probably. George, no.
On the lowest of keys, I was like, I want to see it. I want to see it cut back and he's dead. And then it's like all color now. Like, right? Like he dies.
It's not going to go Wizard of Oz.
No. Like, could you imagine? All right, hear me out here. If this movie had a darker ending, George kills himself, bang, cuts back. Sound is now in the world. It is now color. Because he was silent cinema and he has died. And it comes in and Peppy's crying and it's the whole thing. And like that is the ending of the movie, is now we're in the modern age of Hollywood. Because he was the avatar of silent cinema and now he's dead.
No, I'm good with the ending we have.
Yeah, the ending we have is much happier. Because the ending we have is, Peppy's like, wait, there's one thing we can do to bring you back in and make you a star again.
Well, it's there's a conversation right before that, where she's apologizing to him for making him feel like maybe she was trying to push him. And, she felt like maybe she was the reason that he ended up with the gun in his hand. And he's kind of like, no, it's just, I'm the reason why I put this in my hand, because everyone that's tried to help me, I push them away. But you've always been there over this span of 5 years. He's lost his wife because his wife just couldn't, put up with him anymore. I love that. I love that whole, speak to me, but you see him, he's even silent in regular life.
Yeah, and I mean, the other thing with that is, like, there's another callback to Citizen Kane when they're at the table.
The breakfast, yeah.
And it's the progression of, like, that's another great one. But the ending, they have the conversation. They kind of reconcile their differences. Like, he is going to give in, but he says, I have no idea how I could come back, you know? Like, I can't be in talkies. And she's like, there's one thing you can do that can make you a star again, that can bring you back.
And they create like the
Fred Astaire and Ginger
Yeah,
Rogers.
they create these iconic Hollywood duos.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when we jump into I always forget John Goodman's character name in the movie.
The producer guy.
Or the owner of the studio.
Mm-hmm.
But they're in his office and they're doing the dance scene. And he is just, bright-eyed, the big cigar in his hand, like, oh my God, no one has ever thought of this. Oh my God, I'm seeing something brand new that I can market. And then we transition into the actual scene.
The final shot where it is this big musical number and we're hearing the same kind of score we've heard out the whole thing, and we're hearing the tap and we're like, oh, that's cool. They actually put like tap sounds in there. That's interesting. But you don't really realize it's happening because it's so tied into the music. And then when it finally finishes and it's holding on them as they're like, mugging towards the camera, and you hear them breathing and you're like, wait a fucking minute. Hold the fucking phone. And then it's like they're breathing. And then John Goodman taps the director and the director yells, cut. And I'm like,
First word of the movie.
First word of the movie. And then it's like they say something and John Goodman's like, I loved it. Perfect. But can we do it one more time? And here's the twist of the movie, right? Because throughout the whole movie, I'm wondering, why can't he transition? Like at first he's like, oh, it's a fad. It's never going to do anything. And then it turns into a thing where he's like, I could never do it. And then people like, George Goodman's producer is like...
John Goodman
is like, look, no one's going to want to hear you talk. And I'm like, why? Like, he seems like a good actor, real famous. And then you finally hear what George Valentin sounds like. He's says,
French.
with pleasure, monsieur. And I'm like, he has the thickest French accent. I'm like, oh, I love that twist.
Yeah, because I
love that.
Yeah, because Jean Dujardin and Berenice Bejo and the director, they speak English. So it's not a thing where, it's this French cast and they, it's really, really French where they don't speak the language. No, they speak English. It's just, I think it was a thing where they couldn't get him to shake the accent to make him sound more American.
It's on purpose. I'm so positive it's on purpose because it explains why he's like, no one wants to hear me talk. And it goes into so many of those silent stars,
like John Gilbert. Because I think he had a really high-toned voice or high-pitched voice, and that's why...
He had Brock Lesnar syndrome. He looks like this big bruiser brawler, but when you hear him talk, you're like...
It doesn't match.
He sounds like your high school English teacher. That was the thing. Like, I know there was it Greta Garbo who, when she transitioned, they were like, you have a very thick, like, Swedish accent. Like, we don't know if this will play. And then it wasn't until, like, she gets a few roles that it works out. But there was a lot of silent film stars who were from France, Germany, whatever.
Different countries.
Different countries. And they're like, we can't understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
Like, your accent's too thick or your grasp on the language is shaky at best. Like, Bela Lugosi.
Yeah.
We've said this before. If Bela Lugosi broke 10 years earlier, would have been fine. If he came to Hollywood in 21 instead of 31, totally different career path.
Yeah.
And his biggest problem was his language gap. Like, when he did Dracula, he didn't even speak English. He learned it all phonetically.
Exactly. He learned the language through movie scripts and, I think it's fine, if you have an accent. It doesn't matter. I mean, I get it if you're trying to portray a role for a different nationality and you want to sound like you're part of it. Okay.
Well, you got to think. Because the movie's making this statement of being like, this is why so many silent actors faded away in 1931.
Yeah.
Where it's like, we're marketing to an American audience in middle, Oklahoma. And it's like, bro, like, I don't think we can sell you. Like, you don't, your French accent is so thick and it doesn't match the character we've seen. Because we've seen Douglas Fairbanks. We've seen Zorro, the swashbuckler. We've seen, oh, this guy's probably gonna like come out here and gonna sound like John Wayne or something.
He's a spy. He's in a Russian affair, a German affair. All these big movies, and then he comes out and it's like, oh, you sound like Pepe Le Pew.
You know, like, and that's, I think, such a wonderful, beautiful twist in the movie. And it's like,
I love Pepe Le Pew.
Of course you do. You know, but it's a thing where it's like, it makes so much sense in the movie. It is like a perfect little twist on the movie that just works. And it's so subtle and simple. And when you think about it, you're like, oh, of course. That also is an interesting thing, because I found this out later. Was, I guess, like, some of the scenes were shot, because there's like a real script with dialogue, right? And some of the dialogue is like they're speaking English, and some of it time they're speaking French, and sometimes they're speaking straight gibberish.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's kind of like genius, because you intertwine those, and if you go back to some scenes, you're like, no, he's speaking English. And then when he's by himself, you know, when he's maybe like talking to his dog or whatever, he's speaking French.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that is like a really weird, subtle thing that, again, that's probably why he won the fucking Oscar. All right. That's probably why they brought home the gold statue, was this ending.
But, you know, to tie back into that final scene, the dance,
where they're parroting Ginger Rogers' Fred Astaire.
Yeah, you know, it's this beautiful set. You've got that great opener where it's the guys with the clapper boards, you know, leading into them finally dancing. John Dujardin and Berenice Bejo are not dancers. It took them 6 months to perfect this dance because there was no cuts. They performed the dance in its entirety for 2 minutes. So they wanted to make sure that they knew those steps and they were going to, you know, hit them every time. I think Dujardin said that they shot it 17 times till they finally got the perfect take.
You can tell. And I'm not saying that in a bad way, but it's a thing because they're trying to do the callback to, you know, your Fred Astaire's, you know. And Desjardins is a great actor. He is not a Fred Astaire dancer.
No, but
and it's a thing where it's like I just appreciate the work they put into it, but it is very interesting when you really look at the scene.
But this is where it kind of ties into old Hollywood magic because, you know, just dedication to the craft and storytelling. So them practicing for 5 months every day to, you know, really lock down this dance. They practiced every day at the same studio that Debbie Reynolds and Gene Kelly used to rehearse for Singing in the Rain.
You know why? The ghost of Gene Kelly came in and was like, hey, that was nice. Now do it again and again and again. Because I imagine the ghost of Gene Kelly still haunts those hollowed halls and tell people, that was good. Now we're going to do it again and again and again.
Hey, you need some inspirational ghosts that'll keep you going, keep, you know, the status quo up.
Some people are afraid of like, oh, it's the ghost of a serial killer. I'm like, you don't want the ghost of Gene Kelly coming around telling you to work harder because he will work you to death.
No, but I mean, I love that, you know, this movie has so much attention to detail for Hollywood on screen, but it's also mirrored off screen where, you know, they have them performing, you know, where Debbie Reynolds and Gene Kelly were performing for Singing in the Rain, and this movie parallels Singing in the Rain so much, just in a darker tone. And then we have, you know, stuff behind the scenes, like they had them staying in like old Hollywood homes up in the hills of Los Feliz. And they were saying that they would practice the dance in the garage sometimes. And they're like, we could see the Hollywood sign from where we are. So we're kind of getting these vibes of, you know, this is the life that these people lived. And Shane Black, who's the producer for Monster Squad, or screenwriter.
Screenwriter for Monster Squad, screenwriter for Lethal Weapon, screenwriter for The Nice Guys. Yes.
Apparently, George Valentin's home in the movie, that's Shane Black's, or it was his home.
You know whose home it originally was?
Who was it?
It's like Mary Pickford. Mary Pickford or Marlene Dietrich?
No. Mary Pickford's home was Peppy's home.
That's right.
That was the home she lived in before she built Pickfair with Douglas Fairbanks. Pickfair was torn down in the 80s. So I don't know if this house is like part of her estate, because the bed that George wakes up in after the hospital, that's Mary Pickford's actual bed. What is it? When he goes down the stairs to like discover and like kind of look around the house, the dining set that's behind him, that is her dining set, and that's all like her china and her stuff that's on the table. That's all hers. So I'm assuming it must still be owned by the estate and it's still cared for and I guess maybe used for movies or events or something.
I'd imagine. It is very interesting that how dedicated this movie is to paying its homages.
Yeah.
But honestly, overall, I think the movie just works as a good rise and fall love story. It reminds me a lot of like A Star Is Born. It's kind of like The Star Is Born meets Singing in the Rain. That's a kind of a good way to describe it.
Yeah, and I love that, there was just so much care into, pre-production, filming, and post-production. I mean, I just, it, for me as a movie fan and, loving doing research about movies and, figuring out that they put Jean Dujardin in an isolated 1930s house in the Hollywood Hills to kind of make him feel like George. He's just alone and has nobody, in his corner. Kind of like when we have that scene right before he lights the fire and his own shadow leaves him. When he's yelling, and I'm just like, wow.
I love when this movie gets like expressionistic and goes into that German expressionism, the 1920s stuff, where it's like that's what like silent film really like dug its teeth into, where the real art was. I love the scenes when it does that and gets weird and gets kind of like crazy. I love the shadow work in it. It's so good.
Did it pull your heartstrings when they rescue him from the fire? And when they finally get the reel away from him, it's him and Peppy dancing.
It's their outtakes.
Yeah,
when they get to dance like normal people. The movie is just lovely. And it's just this little feel good kind of movie.
And it's beautiful all around, because you have her looking at the film cell, and they're doing like the noir lighting. They have, they're looking at her through
they got the Venetian blinds.
The Venetian blinds.
Yeah.
You've got, this just white light just pumping in through the hospital room. So, she contrasts in her, her costume that she's in to go see him.
The movie has great composition. It does have great composition.
But there is a filming location that I don't know if you noticed. I know
the Bradbury Building with the steps. Yeah, you don't. It's the most famous steps in LA.
I know. I was hoping, because I know how much you love the Bradbury Building.
I also like how I didn't even have to let you finish.
Yeah.
Because I was like, but I know the location. I watched the movie.
Okay, because I know how much you love Blade Runner. And just,
the Bradbury Buildings has never looked as good.
I mean, that time that we went there, and I think we just both stood in like the lobby in shock, because it was just like, well, it's real, it's here.
You can look up and see the fucking thing.
I know.
It's cool as shit.
But I mean, it's such a beautifully composed scene, them in the stairwell, and it's, you can see that genuine love that he has for her. And then, placing her a little bit higher up on the steps and showing him a little bit lower to show that, his status is dropping, but she still has eyes for him.
And, well, the other thing is the composition of, the stairs and everything. That's like a direct reference to D.W. Griffith, I think, like Intolerance. I'm pretty sure that's a direct reference to one of those scenes.
Haven't seen Intolerance.
It's 3 hours long.
Yeah.
I'll tell you about it later. It's kind of weird. But overall, I really like the artist. Do you have anything else you wanted to say before we hit our wrap-up?
I mean, there's so much that I could talk about this movie.
You don't say.
I do. I mean, like, the coat scene where she goes into his dressing room and she pretends that he's, caressing her.
Very creepy, but
Not
so
creepy,
nice
but,
for the movie.
But, it's based on an actual movie, Seventh Heaven, with Janet Gaynor from 27. But I think, where I'm going to leave it with my last boo fact is that I love that all the posters and the film marquees are telling us what's happening along the path, along the journey.
Oh, yeah, because every little marquee in every movie they're in, it is basically giving you the plot beat of what's going to happen in the next scene.
Yeah, like when she buys all his stuff at the auction and he's walking down the street, it's a poster of her as the guardian angel, or, and he kind of looks, lost after he gets to the end of the street, and it's a theater marquee that says The Lonely Star. And it's just, it's just showing you where we're progressing. And it's like, oh, okay, that was my thought. And I'm glad to see that I am, keeping on with what the director was thinking.
It's a very clever little production piece and like writing piece. Again, I kind of know why this movie probably didn't win Best Screenplay. Well, for one, the screenplay was like 40 pages long, and there was no dialogue.
Yeah.
But like, that's like such a clever, interesting thing for the movie to do that I really did like that. But yeah, your final thought?
I mean, I absolutely love this movie, adore this movie. I can't recommend it enough. 2 strong thumbs up. If you're afraid of silent films, don't be. I mean, if you want to branch out into it, try this movie.
This is probably one of the better movies to start a silent film because it's a modern movie.
Yeah,
like,
it's a modern film,
yeah.
But it's a period piece. And you don't really feel like, this hasn't aged well, or, I can't really keep up with going on. It's like, it's very simple to keep up with what's going along in the story.
Yeah, and it's a thing where the acting is all the acting's very modern and naturalistic. When it's hammy old school acting, that's like on purpose because the actors are playing a role. It really does work as a nice little, okay, this is like a broad overview of what a silent movie is, and it's very digestible. It's very easy to work with. I would recommend this to anybody interested in silent movies that wants a very nice dip of the toe into that genre or that era of film.
Because it's a good genre. I mean, I know, as time goes by, we progress and we pick up new technology. But I mean, there are some phenomenal silent movies that'll just, they'll get you. I mean, this movie makes me cry, but...
I have said this on more than one occasion. We've made the greatest movie ever in 1927, and it didn't need dialogue. Watch Sunrise, everyone.
I know, you and Sunrise.
It's so good. It's so good.
But yeah, I mean, this movie was partially based off of Sunrise, so, please give silent movies, a fair shake. I mean, look into it, because I mean, the history of silent films is fascinating, just how to basically do everything, because it was such a foreign concept of filmmaking. But just how, these actors, were huge stars, and then they just kind of got wiped away because you have an accent or you don't have a singing voice. It's what's the quote? We didn't need words. We had faces.
Sunset Boulevard.
Such a good film.
But talking about, silent film stars, actors, famous things. So we're going to talk about probably one of the most famous actors of all time.
Of all time.
For next week?
Actor, public figure.
Director, writer, producer.
Musician, composer. We're talking about Chaplin next week, and this is the Robert Downey Jr. biopic of Charlie Chaplin.
Comes out in the mid-90s?
I think so. Early to mid-90s, somewhere in there.
And it is another movie that you have lobbied for as being you should have just given him the Oscar, should have mailed it on the premiere day.
Yeah. This is a movie that I will always fight for. I don't know if you noticed, we had one of the stars of Chaplin in The Artist.
Was that John Goodman?
It was not.
Fuck.
Want me to give it to you?
Okay, I'm trying to think, because we watched Chaplin together years ago. Like I think, God, had it been fucking 8 years ago.
Let me
James Cromwell?
Nope.
Fuck. Batman?
No, not Batman.
Who?
Penelope Ann Miller, who plays John Dujardin's wife in the movie.
Oh, well, fuck me. Okay, so... Oh, yeah, she is in the movie.
She is in Chaplin.
There's like 4 wives in Chaplin, all right?
She's not one of his wives.
Oh, God damn it.
Okay. No, she works for Chaplin. Remember, she's the one where she eventually quits, and it was revealed that he gave her a paycheck for the rest of her life. He made sure to take care of her.
I'm gonna be very interested in revisiting Chaplin, because the last time I watched it was with you. Yeah. And I remember really liking it. I remember really liking Robert Downey Jr., but I remember literally nothing about that movie.
I figured.
Well, again, I watched it once.
That's why. I figured you only watched it the one time. I watch it every now and then. But I'm really excited to talk about Chaplin. It should be a good episode. But if you want to listen to us on a different platform than you currently are, you can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and YouTube. You can go to our YouTube channel, The Film Vault. That is The Film Vault on YouTube, where eventually Dean will get off his ass and upload slideshow versions of this podcast. We love slideshows. But if you wanted to follow us on social media, you can go to The Film Club Podcast on Instagram, where we post daily stories, upcoming episodes, and random adventures we go on. And with that, we'll see you next week at the Film Club. Have a good week, everybody. Oh no, we'll say goodbye like George Valentin. Listen. So cheesy.